Hi, I'm Pete and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Well, today is the big day. We're separating our Dexter herd for breeding, and they're going into three groups. Group one is the cull cows and heifers, which are going to butcher next year, and we don't want them to get bred. Group two is Titus the Bull's breeding group, and group three is Orden the Bull's breeding group. This video is all about getting them moved around and separated, and after we get them separated, I'll sit down with you all and go through how we manage our herd with two bulls to prevent inbreeding, because I've gotten a lot of questions about that in the past. Step one is to sort out all the females that we don't want to get bred. So for us, this is 2019 heifers. We don't want any of them bred. They're going to the butcher next year. And then we have two cull cows along with their calves that we're separating out too, and we're going to send those this winter. We closed the gate while all the cattle were eating in the heifer yard. Then we moved the bale ring over the fence to the adjacent cattle yard and put a bale in it. This was the bait to help sort the cattle through the heifer yard gate. Then we started sorting. I had a list on a scrap of paper of which cows and which heifers we wanted to keep in the pen, and we had to work all the others out. I manned the gate and Hillary sorted them through. This was the first year we'd kept cull heifers in a separate pen, and it turned out to be a pain in the butt to get everybody separated. But eventually we got them sorted just as a storm came through. We wound up with 2 cull cows and 4 cull heifers in this pen. The next step is to separate the bulls. The bulls are both together in one pen in the cattle barn, and we have to take Titus out and put him into a separate pen from Orden so that we can turn each out into the correct group of cattle. I carry the cattle prod in case of emergency, but I don't need to use it on the bulls. They're fine to handle. We were worried about Titus getting upset in the little pen, but he was fine. They're good bulls. The next step, and that's step 3 for those of you keeping track, is to divide the breeding cows into each bull's group. We headed out to the winter pasture gate. I made a list of which cows we wanted to be with each bull, and I'll talk more about that decision-making process at the end of this video. We're going to divide the cows the same way as we did the heifers. In this case, though, hay isn't the cheese or the bait. It's the green forage that's in the winter pasture that's going to lure the cows or make them want to come through the gate. We want to get Orden the Bull's group through the gate and screen out all the rest. I opened the gate, then went out to call the cows in. Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Of course, the lead cows were not the ones we wanted. And then, once again, Hillary sorted the cows and I manned the gate. Hillary worked the cattle around and around, and eventually we got Orden's group into the winter pasture. There was 5 cows for him to breed. The cows' calves were another story. We got 3 of the 5 into the winter pasture, but we couldn't get the other 2. Calves just won't follow orders. They're 4 months old anyway, so there's no harm in weaning them from their moms and leaving them separate from Orden's group. 2001?
Yeah, he goes.
You're gonna run back. However, there was one calf that's less than a month old that we had to get in with his mom. This is Marty, and we had to chase him for a while before I could finally grab him and carry him in. Come on, buddy. I want to get you with your mom. Come on. Come on. Come in. Hey, Prudence. Come in. Come in. Come in. He's going to want to go into that pasture, so come on ahead of him. Come on, little guy. Come in. Come on, little guy. Come in. Come on, little guy. Let's go, buddy. Come on. Come on. Don't move fast or he's going to shy away. Come in. Come in.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Okay. Come on, Coco. Then we pushed Orden's herd into the barn. That was easy. They're like gum on a carpet, right? You need another piece of gum to get it off. Come in. Come on, guys. Go. Come on, guys. Next, we worked Orden's group into the far pen of the barn where Orden was. Pull that gate. Go and get that gate and pull it in.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
All right, come on.
You're not going that way.
Come on. Nope, not that way. Come on.
I think we're just going to give up on calves, right? Now we could let Titus out. Remember him? I talked about him in the very beginning when we put him in the little pen.
Come on.
He came out, gave the cows in the adjacent pen a sniff, and then looked and saw that the door was open to the pasture, and lickety-split he headed right out. He knows where to go.
I'll close this.
He headed right for the back gate of the winter pasture that the other cattle were on the other side of. All right, buddy. Yeah, it's time to meet the ladies. Okay, buddy. Come in. I let Titus through the gate and he immediately started doing his job, sniffing butts. And he'll sniff butts and he'll sniff pee, and he always does this thing with his nose that all bulls do where they pull their nose up, apparently to get the scent into some special receptors in their nose to tell whether the cow's coming into heat. Anyway, he'll spend the next 3 weeks sniffing butts and following cows around as they come into heat until everyone's bred. Orden will be doing the same thing. Then we headed back into the barn to let Orden's group out. They'll stay in the barn in the winter pasture while Titus's group stays in the grove and possibly goes out to grass if it starts growing again. The last step was to calf-proof the cattle barn, and that probably should have been the first step, because before we got to it, 2 of the calves we'd caught in the winter pasture went out through the feeder panels in the barn and were in the laneway next to the barn messing around. So we had to round them up and run them back into the barn, and then we put up cattle panels across the front of the barn that the calves can't get through, and we put boards underneath the gates to the cattle pens so that the calves can't go under them. Back through.
Why you got a bull like that? Do you want me to hold anything?
Can you dump out the other water bucket that's in the little pen? The cattle will remain separated for breeding for the next 2 heat cycles, or about 6 weeks. So we have 3 groups now on the farm, and each group is separated by what we call a Maginot line. Remember the Maginot line that the French built to guard against German invasion before World War II. Now theirs didn't work very well, but these do work well. And all it is 2 fences with a gap in between them so that the bulls can't get right up against the fence and smell the heifers or the cows' butts on the other side of the fence, because all it's going to do is agitate them. So we keep a distance that way. There's one here, and then there's one over at the winter pasture entrance, spacing it back from the gate. I don't think the bulls like being separated. They stared at each other over the Maginot line, or maybe it was more like the Berlin Wall. I think they're missing each other already, or they're envious of the females on the other side of the fence. You know, life works that way. The last part of this video is explaining how we assign bulls to cows in our herd. So we have 2 bulls, and I get a lot of questions about this. They say, well, how can you breed so many years with just 2 bulls? And we've been breeding 7 years now, and we're not even close to the end of our genetic breeding capacity with our bulls. They can continue on much longer. And the way it works is this. If you have a herd of 1 cow, and this is oversimplifying it right to its basic terms, 1 cow, 1 bull. That bull can breed that cow for that cow's entire life. So if that cow is a Dexter and it lives 15 years and can breed for 15 years, it may have 13 calves out of that 1 bull. 13 calves out of 1 bull and 1 cow. Now let's go further and say that 7 of those 13 calves are heifers. This is where you need a second bull, because that bull's daughter calves are to be bred by a second bull. So for that second generation of 7 heifers, you've got the second bull breeding them while the first bull's still breeding the mother or the grandmother cow. So out of those 7 heifers, over their 15 years each of life, you've got a scad of calves, enough to keep your farm going if you're a small farm like ours. And we're just entering that phase now where we're running into stock that's got 1 bull as its grandfather and the other bull as its father, and those heifers get sent for cull. But then again, we've got a lot of other cows that are still in that first generation where they've only been bred by Titus, our first bull. So we've got lots of breeding capacity left out of those 2 bulls, because if you consider your first generation cow is 15 years, or actually we have 6 or 7 first generation cows that can be bred by either bull. And then you've got a second generation that's another 15 years. You're talking about 30 years out of 2 bulls. Now the bulls probably won't last that long in terms of their capacity to breed, and we'll have to bring in a third bull at that point. But you can see 2 bulls rapidly increase the number of cattle you can have without any inbreeding. But once you do get to that point where you're looking at breeding a 3rd generation, you have 2 choices. Number 1, you can do what we do, and that is cull those heifers that have the grandfather and father being our 2 bulls, cull them and send them for beef. Or you can choose to line breed, which has been done a lot in the past. It was done on dairy farms. There are closed Dexter herds, where if you have good enough genetics and you don't have bad recessive traits that may express themselves through inbreeding, you can breed in a line with grandfather being bull 1, father being bull 2, and then the next round being back to bull 1, and continue on. And historically, some beef breeders have chosen to do that to concentrate good genetics and to keep other genetics out. So that's how we do it with 2 bulls. It's not all that complicated. If you get a sheet of paper and you start penciling in your generations of cattle, it's pretty easy to figure out. Hey little guy, I'm glad that job is done. In the next few weeks I'll be out in the pasture with the bulls, filming them doing what they do best. And I hope to put that into a future video called Bulls Gone Wild. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining me. I hope you learned something. There's always something to learn on the farm, and I'll see you next time.